we've seen self-congratulatory message by certain, uh, you know, by the politicians that this Diwali has been better and they've taken credit for it. But reality is that this Diwali was slightly better, as in if we start calling, imagine 350 AQI morning after as better Diwali and start rejoicing, that's very unfortunate.
So according to a 2012 report, there were 7 million deaths attributable to air pollution alone globally. That means 1 in 8 deaths was because of air pollution. In 2015, this number rose to about 9 million deaths. Collectively, it is more than the deaths caused by HIV, TB, malaria put together.
Nothing concrete has actually happened over last 1 year that suddenly you would expect that things would be better. Do we have more buses? No. Do we have better waste management? No. Has construction demolition activities reduced? No. Has stubble burning infrastructure and incentives for farmers increased? No. So we have no for everything. Nothing really has changed in the last 365 days.
Every year we speak about pollution hitting us and peaking during the winter months, and every year it does come like clockwork. Magar हमारे जो politicians हैं, they are busy in their blame game. On the show today, आज एक डॉक्टर दिल्ली के renowned pulmonologist Dr. Vivek Nangia से सुनिए what damage it is doing to us and our lungs. Also, Vimlendu Jha joins me and tells us कि सिर्फ stubble burning ही cause है इतनी pollution का, or there are other reasons that we don't want to talk about.
Quickly, just kick this off. Vimlendu, I'll begin with you this time. Everyone's talking about it's been a good Diwali. It's not been that bad. What is it really like?
We've seen self-congratulatory message by certain, by the politicians that this Diwali has been better and they've taken credit for it. But reality is that this Diwali was slightly better, as in if we start calling, imagine 350 AQI morning after as better Diwali and start rejoicing, that's very unfortunate. And in fact, 350 is an average. We are talking about almost 900 and beyond levels of AQI and PM 2.5 levels that actually was there in several areas. But the reason why we were still slightly better than the previous years is because of 3 primary reasons. One is because this year Diwali was 10 days earlier than last year. Last year it was on November 4th. This year was on October 26th. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is that because of the unprecedented rainfall that Delhi had, the stubble burning process was actually postponed. As in the farmers of Haryana, Punjab and Uttar Pradesh, they were not able to burn their stubble, and the stubble burning has just begun right now. And therefore, that coinciding of dates between stubble burning and Diwali, that didn't happen this year. And the third was indeed the weather conditions and the wind direction. So we might think, oh well, things are much better, pat on your back, self-congratulate. As citizens, as politicians, things were as bad, as pathetic. People who live in Delhi, Mumbai, they've seen how things, people still, despite a firecracker ban, went ahead and burst firecrackers. So I would say that things are not that great. Nothing concrete has actually happened over last 1 year that suddenly you would expect that things would be better. Do we have more buses? No. Do we have better waste management? No. Has construction demolition activities reduced? No. Has construction demolition waste management infrastructure improved? No. Has stubble burning infrastructure and incentives for farmers increased? No. So we have no for everything. Nothing really has changed in the last 365 days. In fact, reality, Jyotsna, is that the first good air day that Delhi actually had was on 16th of September, the first one. And last year, we only had one good air day on, I think, October 21st or something. And this good air day was not because everyone worked so hard and our politicians did so much better. It was because it just rained.
It was more like nature taking its course, right? I mean, it's not. And we've seen today, the politicians are out at Ghazipur blaming each other, but nobody's really speaking about the toxins that are being released. Dr. Nangia, is this getting reflected already in your patients?
Actually, you're right. Till yesterday, I thought it's just too early to be seeing a rise in the number of patients coming to the OPD. But today, I realized that the numbers have suddenly jumped. Where people have suddenly developed this cold, cough, wheezing, chest tightness, breathlessness. And the moment you put your stethoscope on their chest, they're like grossly wheezy. In fact, even people who've never had a wheeze ever in their life. So I've seen two patients this morning who've never had a wheeze ever, and yet I landed up with a cold, cough, and wheezing this time. So I think it's just the beginning of our problems. As always, as we go ahead into the winter months, it is only going to worsen with time, and the smog is going to worsen. The overall AQI levels are going to worsen.
So, Dr. Nangia, I mean, in a sense, we're also like globally, we're all COVID compromised immunity. Is that also going to be a factor?
See, basically, when you say COVID compromised immunity, that basically means that you're more prone to secondary infections. But if your lungs are already damaged, as maybe in some people, there's some people who had a very severe illness, required oxygen, required ventilatory support, ECMO, HFNC, anything or any of those things means that they would have had a long-term residual damage to their lungs. Those people would definitely be more prone to developing complications because of air pollution. Not people who've tided over the period normally without any problems of course, they might have had COVID, but did not require oxygen supplementation. So you would not call, they would still be prone to secondary infections, but they may not be prone to or more susceptible to complications because of air pollution. So definitely the chances are that even that 1% or 2% of people who had a residual damage left in their lungs, they would be more prone.
Vimlendu, you were speaking about stubble burning, but I think it's in a sense, is it a convenient excuse that it's only stubble burning? There are just so many other factors that are perhaps not very convenient to speak about.
Absolutely, Jyotsna, and I keep saying that yes, indeed, stubble burning should stop, but we need to understand that stubble burning only happens for 40 to 50 days in a year, and it's an episodic source of pollution. Indeed, what happens, unfortunately, is stubble burning happens at the same time when there's winter, there's wind direction, and then there's Diwali crisis and all of it together. But when we're looking at the cause of air pollution, as what I was talking about earlier, that 364 days in a year, Delhi's air is polluted, air is bad. And therefore, to squarely blame just the stubble burning or just the firecrackers is misplaced understanding or dishonest analysis of air pollution. Air pollution in Delhi NCR or in North India, and if we only stick to Delhi in that sense, is because of perennial causes. We have a transport, for example, 30 to 40% is vehicular pollution. We have more than 1.30 lakh vehicles plying on the roads of Delhi, with almost 42% of them who are plying illegally because they are beyond 10 years and 15 years period, but they've still been plying. Almost 20 lakh vehicles in Delhi are plying without a PUC. Construction and demolition activities, open burning of garbage, coal thermal power plants. All those issues are the perennial issues, but it becomes very, very politically convenient for our political class to latch on to a particular thing and just it helps them campaign, it helps them in their optics. For last several years, we heard Arvind Kejriwal and his government put these huge billboards across the city saying हमने दिल्ली को साफ कर दिया, पंजाब में पराली जलाने से दिल्ली गंदी हो गई, as if the entire Delhi's pollution problem was because of parali. This year we don't see those ads because they are in the government there. But imagine the central government and Delhi government comes together and shakes hands when it comes to issues of cut tree felling. In just last 1 week, they gave tree cutting permission for almost 500 trees and several infrastructure projects for AIIMS and for IIT and for metro and for everything else. So if they want, they are able to come together. But on such a critical issue of air pollution, why is there no coherent collaboration between central government and respective state governments? Every third child in Delhi has some sort of a pulmonological challenge. And that is because of air pollution. What happens when you breathe 350 and 370 and 400 and 450? These are not some sort of glamorous numbers. These are level of PM 2.5 and PM 10 and every form of toxins that you're breathing. So it's a it really, I have a little daughter. She's 2 years old. So far, I've kept her safe, but so unfortunate that I have to use the word called I've kept her safe. I have not taken her out. I've not taken her outdoor in this time because she might have a challenge. And a crisis like this, which is ecological, which is health implication, and is economic, morbidity wise, it affects, as in, I think it was a World Bank report that talked about 90 billion US dollar worth of performance impact that air pollution has on India each year. So if these things don't move our political class and make them think that this is a priority, imagine they bought so many things. Why couldn't have they bought 5,000 more buses? They bought so many things. Why could they buy 200 more road cleaners? We feel that we might be the fifth richest country in terms of economy and first, whatever, first and second and third on some of these things. But these basic denominators and indicators of growth and development and being progressive is completely missing from our political and governance narrative.
The political class, but it's also people who are bursting those crackers who say, "Kya farak padta hai 2 दिन से?" What difference does it make? But it is making a difference, and you've been speaking about it, and you're getting more and more patients who are complaining about the repercussions of this. So I want you to actually go a little bit deeper into it. So just to elaborate how harmful it is.
We'll talk about two aspects of it. One is mortality, and the other is the morbidity. Mortality refers to the number of deaths that are caused because of air pollution. So according to a 2012 report, there were 7 million deaths attributable to air pollution alone globally. That means 1 in 8 deaths was because of air pollution. In 2015, this number rose to about 9 million deaths. Collectively, it is more than the deaths caused by HIV, TB, malaria put together. Much more than the number of deaths caused by any natural calamity or by any terrorist attack so far that we've known of. I mean, I wouldn't include the Ukraine war, I wouldn't know their numbers yet. And then there's another report which has come and said, which has been accepted by the Indian government as well, that in 2019, there were approximately 1.6 million deaths in India alone attributable to air pollution. So that is as far as the mortality is concerned. Now, morbidity. Morbidity means the diseases that air pollution can cause. And these diseases begin even from the time when the child is still in the womb, is not even born yet. The child could have a slow growth, intrauterine growth retardation. The child could have poor development of the lung functions. The unborn child could even have, premature birth. Then after birth, they start developing things like cold, cough, allergies, asthmas, frequent respiratory tract infections, especially tuberculosis, viral infections. Some children even develop mental retardation because of air pollution. There was a study which had shown, when they compared the number of children in Delhi versus the number of children in a school in South India somewhere in the Greens, they found that the lung functions were worse in the children from Delhi as compared to the children from South India. And so there was definitely a impact of the air pollution on their lungs. There's another study also which was published some time back, I remember, where they had shown that 40% of the school children have some impact on their lung functions because of the air pollution from Delhi and the NCR. Then as they grow, as they become adults, then problems seem to worsen further. These children who develop asthma can later on develop COPD, can develop hypersensitivity pneumonitis, which has been a more recent kind of a correlation with air pollution, and of course lung cancer. So lung cancer, which was classically considered to be a cancer of smokers, is now being seen in non-smoking young women, only attributable to air pollution. The impact of air pollution is far and wide. It could result in heart attacks, it could result in strokes, it could result in premature deaths, it could result in kidney failures, in liver problems, and so many other issues that could be caused by it. In 2015, the then president of USA, Mr. Barack Obama, had come to our country to attend the Republic Day parade. So he was here for 3 days, 25th, 26th, and 27th of January. And at that time, the concentration of PM 2.5 was in 70s and 80s. These days it is 200s and 300s. So at that time they calculated When he went back, he underwent certain physiological tests, and it was calculated that his lifespan had been reduced by 6 hours. That means 2 hours per day. So, in those 3 days that he spent in our country, his lifespan had been reduced by 6 hours. We are living here and breathing the same air for so many years between 2015 to 2022. 7 years. Imagine the number of hours that our lifespan has been reduced already. I mean, I would think it would be by years that our lifespan is getting reduced. And then focusing on Diwali per se, there are certain firecrackers like Fuljadi, Anar, Ladi, Charkhi, Samp, and one other one, probably there are 6 of them, which emit particulate matter 200 to 2000 times higher than what has ever been approved by WHO, the World Health Organization. So, that is the quantum of damage that we're causing to ourselves, but we're not realizing.
When you hear what Dr. Nangia is saying, Vimlendu, and then you wonder why, as you said, the meter doesn't move. What will it take to make it move? I mean, A, this kind of data, B, every single list that comes out, 8 out of 10 cities are from India. And yet, we are stuck in this whole blame game and nothing is going to move. Do you think anything will change?
Things can't remain like this because, as Dr. Nangia was also talking about, situation, we are not trying to talk about air because of romantic reasons. It's not as if it affects our recreational activity. It affects, as Sir was talking about, it affects our lung capacity, it affects our mortality, it reduces life expectancy, it reduces everything, and therefore we should ideally, in any sane society, this should be priority number one. Because the thing is that the day Arvind Kejriwal, that morning, Diwali after, congratulated all of Delhi, he almost normalized an AQI of 300 as if, good job. And then, the environment minister. So imagine if you stop normalizing something like 320 and 330 and 350 AQI, where cities in sane societies, cities shut down. Cities are evacuated when air quality index reaches
Absolutely.
300, 350. We've seen in developing nations. I'm not even talking about America and Stanford where this has happened. Ideally there will be public health advisory. Has there been any advisory that we've heard from the government? Not at all. Has anything stopped? Has any government office been stopped? Has schools been shut down? Nothing at all. So now we are almost, it's like it's okay, because nobody. The problem is that you do not die or collapse or get an asthma attack next minute when you cut down a tree or when you see this. It's so chronic that it happens over years. The impact, what Dr. Saab was talking about, that the impact of living in Delhi will be visible on my child's size of lung over 10 years. And doctors, scientific fraternity of our country, driven by data and logic and evidence, are actually talking about why we need to stop this rubbish around air pollution, and we need to take concrete, strict, timely action, because otherwise it's too late. It's already too late. As in 7 years, we already breathing this, and maybe 7 years is only 7 years because we started measuring air quality last 7 years, by the way. In India, majority of India doesn't even have air quality monitors. Delhi got its air quality monitors because it's the capital just perhaps 7-8 years ago, and now we have at least more of them. Otherwise, we didn't even have this debate. By the way, small towns in Bihar are as polluted or more polluted than Delhi in that sense, and there's no monitor. We will have to have there was something called a National Clean Air Program, NCAP, that was envisaged a couple of years ago, and we thought that finally we have NCAP, and then we also had EPCA, which has now become CAQM. All of these have just become committees after committees, self-serving, bureaucratic, top-down committees, only waking up in the month of October, dozing off by November, December, and very, IAS led. Like today, I was actually doing a story on the state of affairs at Delhi Pollution Control Committee. By the way, you'll be surprised that 55% of seats in DPCC are vacant. There are only 157 people in Delhi Pollution Control Committee governing, I think, 15 or 20 or 30 million people who live in Delhi. So that's the state of affairs. So unless and until you You invest in public health, you invest in public ecology, you'll not find a solution. It will not happen on its own. By the way, it will not. Otherwise, it will be Supreme Court or it will be the rain gods. That's how things have been. The better days or the better things that we see in this entire air pollution landscape is when the Supreme Court puts a ban on polluting firecrackers or reprimands the local government, or it suddenly rains. And by the way, both are very, very bad. When it rains, it means untimely rain means 20 million other things, including the kind of distress that it causes to farmers. And similarly, if the governance is outsourced to the courts of our country, there can be a bad day when you will regret it. You cannot let the courts decide basic aspects of governance. Collective responsibility is important, but everyone keeps picking up a fight, and that's what tires me sometimes. They just want to fight each other rather than fighting the issue that we have, the elephant in the room, which is pollution. And by the way, Jyotsna, we're not even talking about garbage today. We're not even talking about frothing Yamuna. We're only talking about one thing called air pollution. And each of these, deserve a whole discussion of a whole new government and a whole new infrastructure to really solve these issues.
Dr. Nangia, do you ever feel defeated, when you get children who are, for no fault of theirs, suffering? And this is the first line of defense that gets hit, doesn't it, with pollution?
Yeah, definitely. But I feel that somewhere we ourselves are also to be blamed for it. What are we doing about it? Of course, Vimlendu has been signed that there's a complete action plan on the environmental issues. But having said that, I'm sure whether they have a political will to do it or not is besides the point altogether. But I think there are certain measures that we ourselves as individuals, citizens, could be doing to prevent ourselves from this air pollution. First of all, it's very important to control your indoor air pollution as well. We talk about the outdoor air pollution all the time, but indoors air is also known to be at least 10 to 30 times more polluted than the outdoor air is. So that's another aspect altogether. I think it's very important for us to know now that you have to, the time has come where you'll have to decide your outdoor activities based on the AQI levels. If it is above 300, as Vimlendu also said, that there are cities where they would call it a complete lockdown kind of a situation or mobilize people out of the city. But at least what we need to do is that if it is above 300, then we don't move out at all or move out only as minimal as possible. If it is only very essential, and wear an N95 mask at that time. N95 mask protects you fairly well from at least the particulate matter. It may not protect you from the toxic gases that are there in the environment. If people have asthmas, COPDs, interstitial lung diseases, any kind of a lung disease for that matter, or a heart disease, then they should use 200 as their cutoff to decide not to move out at all. Now that the smog is coming, winters are coming, the first thing that you have to go away from is the concept of morning walk. 5 to 7 a.m. is the worst pollution that can ever be possible. So it is best to go away from the concept of morning walks, go away from the concept of marathons if the AQI level is more than 200, because you can't be doing any strenuous physical activity outdoors at that time. Of course, move more towards electric vehicles now. I think the time has come where we all need to invest in those rather than the usual fancy cars and the fancy sports vehicles and all, SUVs. So that is one aspect. Second is that we need to be, making that effort of planting tree. Make an occasion to plant a tree. Whether it's Diwali, Dussehra, one Sunday a month, plant trees. That's the only way that I feel we can control the air pollution to some extent. And of course, carpooling, relying less on your own transport, lesser vehicular emissions on the roads, then the construction and demolition, all that needs to be controlled. The factories, you'll be surprised that there is still a report which says that the significant amount of air pollution in Delhi NCR is also because of the industries that are existing still, despite all the ban on the industries in our city. And of course, then cigarette smoking. People are still continuing to smoke cigarettes, where there are studies which have shown that living in Delhi, as it is smoking, the kind of air that you're breathing, it's equivalent to some 20 cigarettes or 30 cigarettes in a day. So why do you need to worsen the situation for yourself? So I think there's certain measures that we can take on our own to prevent ourselves and prevent our generations, I would say.
I'm glad you brought this up because it always fascinates me that we see a lot of events, outdoor events that take place in the winter. Winter is still mentally in our mind. Oh, it's the good weather, but all the marathons and these educated people who say doesn't matter, and they're running these marathons come November, come December through the smog. So what about indoor gymming with the air purifiers? Does that work?
So basically, it is not important whether there's an air purifier inside or not. What is important is that the room should be properly ventilated. There has to be a proper exhaust, and the room should be dust-free. Of course, if you have air purifier inside, it may add on to it. But the only issue is that even with air purifiers, we don't have any hard, concrete, large-scale studies to support its use on a daily basis. Although it does make sense that if you're using an air purifier, it would be cleaning your air, the air pollutants would be lesser. There are certain brands which even claim that they're able to capture the viruses and the bacteria. But how much is it true? We still don't know. So air purifiers is still a big question mark to us, whether they are really effective or not. Unless there are those HEPA filters that are constantly working and the house or the room where you're exercising is totally sealed area with only an exhaust which is pushing the air outside. So there probably they may work. And but yes, there are studies which have shown that with air purifier, people who were prone to developing asthma or they were asthmatic kids, the degree of inflammation in the kids was lesser as compared to if the air purifier was not used. So that's all the evidence that we have in support of air purifiers. Although it does make a lot of logical sense, common sense that yes, it would be effective, but I'm not sure yet.
I can just hear my family saying, "We told you so." But Vimlendu, I'm going to go with the final question with you. Right at the beginning when you spoke about that one good day in the whole year, and that is something I'd really like you to speak about because it's a fallacy that jo dikhta nahi wo hai nahi, and through the summer the sun is shining, so we don't see the air pollution and everything is well and good. I really want you to just quickly elaborate on really how bad things are through the year for us.
So sorry, Jyotsna, I just intervene here. It's not dikhta nahi hai nahi, ab to dikhta hai. Now you see the air pollution. That one time supposed to be a silent, invisible killer, but now you're actually seeing it.
No, absolutely. So, and also the unfortunate thing is that we dismiss what dikhta hai today as winter smog, which is actually it's a pollution smog rather than winter smog. तो कहते हैं देखो कुहासा है, ठंड आ गई है. ये कुहासा नहीं है, ये ठंड नहीं है, ये प्रदूषण है. एक चीज तो. The other thing is what you asked that how is the situation? Of course, we have one good day and relatively okay, satisfactory good days in Delhi. Satisfactory in the sense around 100, 150, which again, as we can't expect what what you'd read in Sweden or somewhere else. That sort of air, as it's to expect something different. So things are bad. Things become worse right now. In the month of October, November, December, the winter months, but usually in June as well, you'll see the AQI being around 200, 250. So that's why, as we need a year-long solution, year-long program and a plan, a continuous plan from our government rather than just a knee-jerk odd even and gadi off, gadi on and whatever. These are very, very small things. And by the way, I'm not disagreeing with Dr. Nangia here, but we need to look at the issue of air quality from the lens of equity and justice. How many people can actually buy an air purifier? What would be the percent? It would be less than 0.01% of Delhi's population. Similarly, how many people can afford to work from home and suspend their activity? Can my milkwala work from home and deliver his milk from there, or the auto wala sit at home? So some of these luxuries, we cannot look at these solutions as sustainable solutions. Of course, we as rich, elite, privileged lot, we get more money for our hour, and we also get privileges in terms of घर से काम कर लो और ये कर लो और वो करो. The issue of air quality and issue of environment and public health is that it is people like us perhaps can buy an air purifier or can go on a vacation to Nainital or maybe perhaps shift to another country, and that is what exactly is happening with rich kids when half of them have moved to Goa because of Delhi's air pollution, or from there or to wherever. But the poor, the masses of our country, they can't do that. As in these days, doctors also prescribe that leave Delhi to children. As in, sorry, I don't know whether you write it or not, but they tell parents that आप अपने बच्चे को लेकर के 3 महीने के दिल्ली से चले जाओ. ये डॉक्टर्स में इलाज में दवाई नहीं काम कर रहा है. आज की प्रिस्क्रिप्शन में डॉक्टर्स ये लिख रहे हैं. So when
Dr.
you
Nangia,
that
wondering whether to admit it or not.
So when somebody asks me this question, the doc, you feel we should move out of the city? So my answer to them is that, is there an option? That's where it
exactly.
ends. That's where the common conversation ends.
Exactly. So if that's an option that you can exercise out of your privilege and class, you do that. But air pollution is something. Imagine the traffic guy there, or someone on the roadside, people living in slums, people living next to drains and landfills and railway stations and bus stands. They're the ones. What about them? Like, that's what governance is. Governance is not about the first in the line. It's about the last in the line. Here the first, and every time we say that air pollution affects everybody, affects the rich and poor and politicians and black and white, air pollution also affects different people differently. And we need to look at it from that lens as well. It's not the same just because not everyone breathes the same air. People who live next to a landfill breathe dirtier air than someone who lives in Basant Vihar or someone who lives in South Delhi.
Quickly, Dr. Nangia, before I let you go as well, anything that people want to know, immunity boosters, is it all a myth? Everybody's going to ask, any vitamin, kuch khaye, kuch kare. When this pollution is coming, what is the way out in the next?
So, that's another very interesting question that you asked me, Jyotsna. So I was recently in Mayo Clinic in Rochester, and there I was saying that in India, when somebody falls sick, the first thing they ask you is that Doctor Sahab, खाना क्या है, परहेज क्या करना है, कोई फूड है जो हमें अवॉइड करना है, हम बाहर का खाना खाएं कि नहीं खाएं, हमारा बच्चा बाहर का बहुत खाना खाता है, तो प्लीज आप इसको समझाओ कि नहीं खाना है. And there in Mayo Clinic, there was a complete menu that was given to you, and you could order burgers, salads, pizzas, breads, sandwiches, anything that you wanted to have. For the patient, I'm talking about, not for the attendants. Even for the patients, that was So later on, I thought to myself that obviously, that's true, because that is their staple diet. A burger is a staple diet, a sandwich is a staple diet. So is in Italy, in these European countries, their diet would be pastas and spaghettis and things of that sort. So how can somebody say that, okay, this food is banned and this food is not banned? So what I wanted to convey is that all foods are good to have. That's what I realize now, that there is nothing that you really need to avoid. If at all, it should be an antioxidant rich food that you're having, which will probably build up your immunity to some extent. Multivitamins, if you're having a good nutritious diet, there's no role of multivitamins. Unless your B12 levels are low and you want to build them up, then yes. Vitamin D levels are very low these days, and a low vitamin D level is being associated with so many conditions, including asthma, COPD, so on and so forth. So keep your vitamin D levels high, keep your B12 levels high, keep yourself well hydrated, do not let yourself get dry at all. And somebody asked about vaccines. Well, yes, it's a good idea to take an influenza vaccine this time of the year, because this is the time when the new strain, the vaccine related to the new strain, is now available in our country too. And it does protect you from developing viral infection. Viral infections are usually the trigger point, the first point of illness that can actually worsen and result even in bad pneumonias and so many other complications. So influenza vaccine is something that I would strongly recommend to people, at least those who are vulnerable. Vulnerable would mean the elders, the young children, people who have an underlying diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, asthma, COPD, cancer, any disease for that matter, any kind of a comorbidity if they have, they should go in for an influenza vaccine.
We will keep much for joining me, and very informative. Hopefully we'll learn, and hopefully we'll keep speaking and somebody will listen. Thank you and good night, guys.
Thank you. Good night.